Support for Headline Humboldt is made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, with fear levels high since Donald Trump once again took the oath of office, the Board of Supervisors hears from both the sheriff and the public on immigration enforcement. Also, Tom Wheeler from the Environmental Protection and Information Center joins us to discuss how Trump may impact the much vaunted offshore wind project and other environmental issues. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. Top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. A lot is happening these days in Washington, D.C. Developments that have unsettled many and thrown the future into doubt on everything from immigration and education to economic security and the environment. Even NPR and PBS, long public broadcasting stalwarts, have now come under the gaze of those seeking to radically transform the way we Americans interact with and think about our federal government. I mention that not to rile folks up or push some agenda, but merely to let folks know that we here, at least in this building, understand how uncertainty breeds insecurity and even fear. And that's the development we need to watch closest. Succumbing to fear can lead to deep and scarring outcomes, blind us to subtleties, and massacre hope. These many concurrent changes were made in part to scatter the opposition and media. The more changes proposed, and the crazier they seem to get, like occupying Gaza, the more folks react on instinct and the less discerning they become. In such an environment, it becomes easier and easier to accomplish less obvious but more significant, realistic, and damaging goals that may cripple our national ability to heal and recover. I'm not saying don't act. If you feel moved to engage your right to protest or write letters or post like mad on social media, by all means do so. What I am saying is let's keep our heads. Examine what's being done, not what's being said, and above all, let's keep our faith in each other and in our collective ability to meet this moment without hatred and with an eye toward, yes, building back better. Our guest today is Tom Wheeler from EPIC to discuss the environmental side of Trumpocalypse. But first, the news. In a press conference this week, Congressman Jared Huffman, now the ranking member on the House Natural Resources Committee, issued a blistering takedown of Elon Musk and his so-called Department of Government Efficiency. Musk has been at the epicenter of many recent and chaotic upheavals in government, including the shuttering of USAID, the American International Relief Organization. Musk appears to have great authority within the Trump administration. Unelected, he's also unaccountable to voters. Huffman, meanwhile, has stepped into a much broader and more active role already this term, and he holds nothing back here.
Happy to join my colleagues here in pushing back against Elon Musk and his fake officials, his tech bros that are rummaging through our most sensitive data without authority in violation of the law. And I'm so pleased that we're beginning to litigate and confront this in the courts, that there's this great public awakening that's happening and the outrage is building. And here in Congress, my colleagues and I stand ready to do our part to say no to this outrageous attack on our democracy and our personal rights. So we learned this week that Elon and his tech bros, these young people in hoodies who don't have security clearances, they're fake officials, that they crashed through the doors of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. These are folks whose mantra in the private sector is go fast and break things. And they decided to go fast and break things this week at NOAA. And so, people need to understand that this is an agency that does really important work that millions of Americans depend on every day, although they don't always realize how much they depend on it. It is the home of critical scientific and regulatory systems that protect our safety in important ways. And this starts to make good on yet another aspect of Project 2025, something that I spent much of last year warning about. Trump has promised, his Project 2025 agenda was very explicit about this, to dismantle and privatize NOAA, forcing Americans to pay for things like weather data and also some of the maritime safety data that NOAA maintains. This could have real consequences for the day-to-day lives of every American. The National Weather Service warns communities of incoming severe weather like hurricanes and wildfires and tornadoes. It provides information to emergency managers, decision makers to support our nation's commerce. NOAA's weather forecasts are used by aviation experts to prevent airline disasters, to keep our skies safe for millions of travelers that crisscross the country every day. And cuts to these programs and agencies, make no mistake, will put people in danger. Privatization schemes for this agency will put people in danger. This is not some kind of game. It isn't a stunt to drain the swamp. Purging the government of scientists, experts, and career civil servants, slashing fundamental programs, these things will cost lives. So I also want to make something else clear. Democrats are not going to stand for this. Right now, we are working on every front that we can. I was just at a briefing with Democracy Forward, talking about the different ways they're confronting this stuff in the courts. It's a little bit of whack-a-mole because, you know, every day Elon and his tech bros ride their skateboards over to a new agency and start crashing into their databases. And, you know, sometimes we know about it in time for Democracy Forward or attorney generals or others to go to court and to enjoin it. But other times, compliant officials at these agencies just hand them the keys and they gain access in really disturbing ways. So we're not going to stand for it. We're going to work with the outside folks who are litigating. We're going to work with federal whistleblowers. And we got a briefing this morning about how each of our offices can receive information from whistleblowers, protect their confidentiality, and help use those important voices to shine a light on these violations of the law and these outrages. But standing together with my colleagues here in Congress to use the leverage that we do have in this closely divided House of Representatives to work closely with our allies in outside groups that are litigating, with states that are drawing the line against all of this in court and otherwise, and of course with all of Americans to mobilize public opinion. Through all of this, we are going to say to Elon Musk and his tech bros, enough is enough. Get out of our government.
Dozens of immigrants and their supporters gathered in the Supervisors Chamber this week to hear from Sheriff William Hansel and the Board of Supervisors about the potential for increased federal immigration enforcement. Both the state of California and Humboldt County have passed sanctuary laws which prevent them from cooperating with immigration authorities on apprehending or deporting immigrants. The issue has been in the public eye this week as raids continue in other parts of the country, and the first shipment of so-called high-risk detainees arrived at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. The board and Hansel reiterated to those gathered that they will not be cooperating with federal authorities. Hansel also pointed out that federal raids of this sort don't have to communicate their intent and won't, given our security status.
There's nothing under the federal law that says that they have to notify federal jurisdictions do not have to notify local jurisdictions if they come in and do any kind of enforcement action. We would like them to do that, but it's the same with the FBI, same with DEA. They can come in and serve a search warrant and not contact us. I think that's bad policy to do that, because if something does go wrong in those situations, they're going to need local support to go and try and help with the situation. Or when someone shows up, you know, with law enforcement patches serving a search warrant and we don't know who they are, you know, we're going to be kind of curious about who that is. So we would encourage them to contact us, but they do not have to. And so communication essentially was broken off. There's, you know, in the past they did, you know, when they, back in probably 2017, 2018, you know, they did communicate with us and did speak with us regarding enforcement action. But again, it's been years since they've been up here in Humboldt County, years.
Thank you. I really appreciate, too, that you recognize that with the new administration coming in, and that has brought in a lot of fear around just fear in general, that you recognize that you haven't been reached out by ICE so far. And so, you know, that I hope can calm people a little bit. Just to know that there was a lot of rumors that have gone around, and it instills a lot of fear in people. And our jobs are to help inform people and to make them feel more comfortable. Not that we can go against the federal government, but to give you that information. You know, was ICE at Costco? Was ICE at Winco? Were they rounding people up? And you know, that got put in the papers and really instilled a lot of fear in people, and that's not what we want, but we want people to be cautious and to be able to give them that information.
This is my home now, this is my country. It's here I live and here I'll stay. I have a life here and a good future. Do not send my family away. Let's thank the immigrants, yes, all the immigrants, for our hard work has made us great. And in the future, working together, we'll have justice and turn away from hate.
I am a DACA recipient, and I wanted to ask you all to please look at me. The camera, everyone in this room, please look at me. I am the people who this organized government does not want to help or protect. I am the person that every time negative remarks are made about sanctuary law, who you're limiting their rights to. I am one of many youth members asking you to please expand sanctuary law into Eureka and allow us to feel the same safety I felt when I first arrived here in 2018 to get my education. If there was a very direct path to citizenship that avoid any pain caused to me, I would take it. But it is in my organized government that I want to feel safe in, because the United States government is also a representing body of me. It is my organized government that wants to hurt me, and many others. I want to ask that the sheriff office does work with Centro del Pueblo, that they take the time to spend more time with us and learn about us. I want to thank everyone here for their time, their energy, and their spirit. And if you can find any of that, any time, energy, and spirit to align with us, to sit with us and listen to our stories, please do so.
The board ultimately pointed out that it does not have the power to make Eureka a sanctuary city and that such a move has to begin with the City Council. The board also approved signing on to a letter composed by the Human Rights Commission expressing the county's support for all community members, regardless of citizenship status. We'll be right back after the short break.
This is the PBS app. It's ready for you whenever you want full episodes of your favorites, perhaps a little history, or the real story, shows with heart, or the latest news and docs. Even stream your local station live. It's all there waiting for you. So download the PBS app now for everything you love and a whole lot more to explore. Stream anytime, anywhere with the PBS app.
Life is complicated enough. Why worry about what to do with your extra car? Skip the costs of maintaining it, storing it, insuring it, or renewing registration. Car repairs? Forget about it. Here's one easy solution to your car problem. Donate it to our station. It's fast, free, tax deductible, and if you donate, you're going to feel incredible knowing you're supporting quality programming. Interested? Just call this toll-free number or donate online. Thank you.
We're joined now by Tom Wheeler, Executive Director of the Environmental Protection and Information Center. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, as we've been covering throughout the show, a lot of things have changed in the last couple of weeks because of the advent of the Trump administration, times part due. And I was hoping to have you in as a sort of an subject matter expert to help folks realize what the impacts are looking environmentally. And I know that you follow that stuff quite closely, and your organization has been an active part in kind of trying to fight some of our worst inclinations in that regard. So to start off, can you just sort of give us a sense of what are the top issues that you're watching right now as Trump hits the ground and makes all the moves that he's making? What issues are you most concerned with?
Sure. So first, let's talk about climate change. This is the global phenomenon that the United States needs to be a leader on because we are the leader in greenhouse gas emissions in the world.
We do the most for it, so we need to fight it, right?
And so the Trump administration has already pulled us from the Paris Climate Accord. Thankfully, the state of California will continue to invest in climate change work, Our ability to do so is somewhat hampered in this federalist system that we have. So I'm glad that I have good leadership here in the state of California, that we're going to continue to work on climate change. But having a loss of leadership from the United States on the international stage is huge. And we don't have time to wait on climate change. The impacts are occurring now, and it's going to be more difficult to avoid the worst case scenarios if we have to wait 4 years.
Yeah, and we're already seeing the hottest year on records, and it's already accelerating faster than what had previously been predicted, right?
Absolutely. January was the hottest month on record.
Yeah. And one thing, just real quick for folks at home, Humboldt County and the North Coast is in a vulnerable position in terms of climate change. Some people say that we're going to be among the most affected counties in California once the impacts are fully realized. So something to watch out for. You know, on my drive here, I was going around Humboldt Bay, and that is going to be epicenter for sea level rise. So we are absolutely going to be impacted. Industries along Humboldt Bay are going to be impacted, such as our oyster industry, which is impacted because of ocean acidification, which is a product of climate change. Yeah, so we have climate change, that's number one. Mm-hmm. I'm also looking at impacts to our federal workforce, to the civil servants that move forward and make sure that the food that we eat is safe, that the air that we breathe is clean, that the water that we drink is safe. So we know that there is a plan to massively disrupt the federal workforce, to reduce it significantly. That's a concern. There are many federal employees here in Humboldt Bay that contribute every day to our well-being, and these folks are unclear whether they're going to have a job in the future. Yeah. So that's an economic impact all by itself, not counting what that loss of expertise might result in, right? Absolutely. Yeah. And we were talking a little bit before the show about how for these folks, it can be a hard choice to make. They're getting offered sometimes buybacks for their contract, but if they stay, they're looking at potentially 2 to 4 years of extreme discomfort, and an easy way out is to take the buyout. It may be hard for folks to resist. Yeah, so the Trump administration has offered 7 or 8 months of pay for folks who want to resign now, which might be enticing if you have to work through 4 years of a Trump administration. So I understand that there might be a number of federal employees who might consider taking such a buyout. And if they don't, there's also plans to significantly shrink the size of the federal workforce. So you might be wondering if you will still have a job even after the buyout. Yeah, exactly. And then you'd be out the 7 months of opportunity to be okay for a little while, which is another consideration for sure. What else? So next is going to be executive orders and what Trump can do using his executive power. Already we've seen him direct the Council on Environmental Quality, which is a federal agency, has directed them to revoke their rulemaking on the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA is one of our bedrock environmental laws that requires us to study environmental impacts before we take major federal action. So now we have a less clear picture of what rules are actually in place for when the Forest Service, say, wants to do a major logging project that might impact water quality or habitat for the northern spotted owl or other endangered species. If there's a federal dam project in California or a water infrastructure project, it's unclear what rules they're going to have to abide by because of the Trump administration. And then we have Congress. This is, a presidency and a Congress of the same party. They are talking about major rollbacks to federal environmental laws that are going to be more difficult for us to undo. So whether we still have the Antiquities Act, which is used to protect national monuments, it's unclear at this moment. So basically, we're looking at a total overhaul of how we consider and approach our relationship with the environment in this country. We were talking a little bit about how your own organization and others who advocate for responsible environmentalism use NEPA in particular to sometimes bring suits that force violators to come to terms and to address some of the abuses that they've been involved in. And basically the standards that you would use to file those suits is what's going to be missing with NEPA's removal, or whatever you want to call it. Absolutely. So Trump can't get rid of the law. He doesn't have that power. Yeah. But what he's saying is get rid of all of the rules that are used to implement the law. Congress often will pass laws that are vague and broadly written, and they are turned over to the executive branch to implement. And so this is done through rulemaking.
And so if we lose those rules, if we lose those regulations, our kind of rule of law, the predictability of law is gone. So it's unclear what sort of rules are going to apply. So if we're thinking something like offshore wind, if that continues to move forward, what are the rules that are going to govern that? Do we have to study cumulative impacts? Do we have to study impacts to adjacent human communities? And what are the impacts on development on those communities? It's unclear at this moment.
It's interesting, we live in California, which is known for being sort of environmentally active in terms of policy. And we do have, environmental laws here that sort of kind of work hand in glove with NEPA, CEQA, they call it, the California Environmental Quality Act. How much will that protect, our area and state from abuses, and how much is it still going to be out of our hands to stop things that we see that are coming?
Again, I'm thankful to live in California. We have a good protective suite of environmental laws, CEQA, or the California Environmental Quality Act, being one of them. But CEQA only applies to the borders of California, and it also doesn't apply to federal actions within California. So again, if the Bureau of Reclamation or the Forest Service or the Bureau of Land Management, if they're proposing some sort of a project that might impact us, CEQA doesn't protect California citizens. CEQA also doesn't protect the citizens of our 49 other states. And so I think about my sister in Louisiana, and I worry for her and for her child.
Sure, and just the future in general. I mean, all of those other states are going to, it's like we pretend that we're on these little islands, but there are no borders on the earth.
Absolutely.
And I think that those impacts are going to be felt everywhere. So what is the strategy, do you think, from observationally, or what are you planning on doing in terms of like litigation or resistance in order to stop the worst of these excesses?
So first, absolutely, litigation. So EPIC and other environmental organizations are already in court to challenge these sorts of things. And so basically every executive order, every action that the Trump administration is taking that might threaten the environment is going to be litigated. And so that's a good thing. We still have generally a working judiciary that is capable of checking abuses by the executive branch. So I'm happy for that separation of powers. That's first and foremost. Next, any sort of other excesses, if Congress starts to monkey around with our federal environmental laws, we have future coming elections. And so I hope that these lawmakers realize that they're going to be responsible to voters. And environmental voters will turn out in the midterm elections in 2026.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. It's like they have all this, what they consider to be a mandate, and they've come in and they're making all of these dramatic changes, the likes of which we've never seen. It's never been like this with any incoming administration. And they act as if they're not going to face voters. Trump may not, but Congress will. And so it's going to be interesting to see how that turns out. You mentioned wind power. We talked to Huffman about it a little bit last week, and he said that he thought long-term the wind project will likely continue to exist. It may be slowed down a little bit. Is that also your verdict?
So, I don't have a clear crystal ball at the moment on wind power. The Trump administration has said that they're going to do everything in their power to scuttle wind energy development. That's going to send a pretty strong message to wind energy developers and other energy companies about the future of wind energy. If you're thinking about where to invest money as a developer, you might not want to invest money in wind power. Thankfully, here in Humboldt County, if we're thinking about our proposed wind energy development, we're talking about a decade plus timeline. So we weren't expecting to have turbines in the ocean until at least 2035. So we're going to have that project escape this Trump term.
Yeah.
Whether too much damage had been done to the Bureau of Ocean Energy Management, to investors, it's unclear to me at this moment.
Yeah, it's interesting also, Huffman was talking about NOAA. I was just a little bit for folks, how important is NOAA to the environmental movement?
Oh, NOAA is critically important. If you like salmon, if you want to eat salmon, you'll want to have NOAA around because NOAA is in charge of protecting things like salmon.
Yeah.
And so, it's part of this layered federal bureaucracy, which might seem distant and unrelated to your daily life, but every product that you touch at a grocery store is going to be regulated by the federal government. They ensure that we don't get sick from the food that we eat.
Yeah, it's interesting. People almost seem to get comfortable with the idea that the federal government has done these things, but they're naturally existing. But our quality of life is what it is because the government has made a lot of policies and efforts to make sure that we're living in a safe place with rules and that help protect us. And hopefully we don't get too far down the road of seeing a lot of those rules get winnowed away. A couple of things that have been highlights of the past couple of weeks, of course, something like 2.2 billion gallons of California water was released, and it's all going to waste.
It is all going to waste. The Trump administration is trying to solve a non-existent problem. I don't think he understands how California water works, where we try to save it in our reservoirs during the winter to then later use during our dry summer months. And so by putting water into irrigation canals, it's not needed at the moment. We're actually flooding farm fields.
Yeah, who weren't ready, so they hadn't cleared the areas or any of that kind of stuff. And the whole idea seems to be based on this political move about California firefighting. Like somehow because the water's mismanaged, that's why we've had these fires. And so releasing more water was like his political point to kind of hammer that down, and that's not even really what's going on.
He issued an executive order blaming the fires in LA on environmentalists in Northern California. Folks like myself, radical environmentalists. I will wear that mantle proudly, that I'm a radical environmentalist, but I don't think that our water decisions here in Humboldt County had anything to do with the fires in Los Angeles.
Yeah. And then last couple of things, the dam situation, the Klamath dams are out, so that's pretty much settled. I know that there's some further reclamation work going on. Do you see that continuing unimpeded, or is there a chance that some of that could be derailed?
Oh, well, the dams are out, and that's the good news. We got the dams out before Trump could take office, and so that project is finished. I don't think that there's going to be significant impacts to reclamation, but now we have to look at the Eel River. Eel River dams are slated for removal. PG&E, who owns the dams, wants those dams to be removed. We've built a broad political consensus that those dams need to be removed. So will the Trump administration impede, interfere, somehow try to retard that dam removal? It's unclear at the moment. But I wouldn't be surprised because he seems to be going after just kind of nonsensical things.
I think he's throwing up as much chaff as he can for whatever deeper purpose that maybe we haven't seen yet. That's all the time we have today. Thank you for joining us and for help delineating all of that. It's going to be hard to keep our eye on all of those bouncing balls. But if people want to check out your organization and figure out a way to help support it, what's the website?
wildcalifornia.org.
Okay, yep, they do great work and have been doing it so for a long time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
That's it for this evening. Check out our podcast, Neon Galactic, this week for a two-part interview with Lou Elizondo, a whistleblower, a man who's been featured on CNN, CBS This Morning, Fox News, 60 Minutes, and countless documentaries. That's at youtube.com/@neongalactic or anywhere you get your podcasts. Stay tuned, stay informed.